Hello everyone, welcome to the Command Tower. After browsing the Assassin's Creed spoilers, there are definitely a few cards that catch my eye. The Capitoline Triad is definitely interesting, a 10-drop 7/7 that costs one less for each historic card in your graveyard, and you can exile any number of historic cards from your graveyard with a total mana value of 30 or greater to get an emblem with creatures you control have base power and toughness 9/9. We've seen the occasional inclusion of planeswalkers as commanders, but never a straight up emblem, and I think this is about as close as it gets. While the cost is high, as soon as you activate the Triad, you're putting yourselves ahead of your opponents for the rest of the game. I'm also loving the inclusion of real historic figures. Can't wait to sit down at my LGS and someone busts out their competitive Leonardo da Vinci deck or Cleopatra. There's one card in particular that's caught my attention, along with many other eager deck builders, which is Templar Knight. So if you'll indulge me for another 15 minutes or so, I'd love to show you the first Assassin's Creed deck I will be building.
Templar Knight is a 2-drop 3/1 human knight with vigilance. A deck can have any number of cards named Templar Knight, and you can pay 1 white mana and tap 5 untapped attacking creatures you control named Templar Knight to search your library for a legendary artifact card, reveal it, and put it into the battlefield, and shuffle your library. Firstly, I'd like to mention that this is the first white card to say you can run any number in your deck, which also finally completes the color wheel for this kind of ability. In case you didn't know, this rule also applies in singleton formats like Commander, so if this kind of deck sounds interesting to you, I'd recommend checking out the other colors. Now for the build. Right off the bat, you have a few options for commanders. If you want to lean into the human knight aspect, here are my favorite options. For humans, we have Kyler, Sigardan Emissary, a 5-drop 2/2 legendary creature human cleric that says whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Kyler, and other humans you control get +1/+1 for each counter on Kyler. There's also Audric, Master Tactician, a 4-drop 3/4 first strike that says whenever he and at least 3 other creatures attack, you choose which creatures block this turn and how those creatures block, which essentially makes our Templar Knights unblockable. It's also easy to include Horn of Gondor in this deck, since it is a legendary artifact. For Knights, there's of course Haytham Kenway, which is a 4-drop 3/3 that says other Knights you control get +2/+2 and have protection from assassins. And when Haytham Kenway enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls until Haytham Kenway leaves the battlefield. We can run support cards like Herald of Hoofbeats, Vodalian Wave Knight, and Knight Exemplar to give our Templar Knights a bit more evasion. All of these cards are so great, so how are we supposed to choose which ones to run? Well, let's put them all in, and run Morophon the Boundless as our commander. Morophon is a 7-drop 6/6 shapeshifter with Changeling, which means it is every creature type. As Morophon the Boundless enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, and spells you cast of the chosen type cost WUBRG less to cast. Additionally, other creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. It just so happens that 6 out of the 7 previous cards were humans, so this would make our Haytham cost 2, our Kyler cost 3, and all of our Templar Knights cost only 1 generic mana for a 4/2 with Vigilance, which is pretty awesome. So this deck is a 5-color deck then? Well, not quite. If we opt to build a full 5-color deck, our mana base won't be consistent enough to get all the white mana we need to play multiple Templar Knights every turn. I mean, look at our stats. I know I just talked all that game about our Templar Knights only costing 1 generic, but I'd rather not rely on Morophon every match, especially when people connect the dots and start aiming all their removal at it. The nice thing about Morophon's high cost is that it's all generic mana, which gives us the freedom to run whatever kind of land base we want. If we look at the cards from before again, all of them are white, blue, and green. With this, we can more precisely choose our lands. In Bant colors, there's Simic, Selesnya, and Azorius. Since we want as much access to white mana as possible, let's actually cut the Simic lands altogether. Since we'll be running Karametra, we'll want to make sure to include dual lands that have basic land types. Karametra, God of Harvest, is a 5-drop 6/7 legendary enchantment creature god with Indestructible. As long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature, but the most important part is whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. If you want to look closer at the land base or anything else in the deck, I'll leave a link in the description. Bant also gives us the perfect foundation for card draw and ramp. so let's take a look at each. For card draw, we obviously want stuff that triggers when we play our Templar Knights. Cards like Beast Whisperer, Tulane, Teller of Tales, Garrick's Pack Leader, Soul of the Harvest, Elemental Bond, and Zendikar Resurgent are all valid options, along with stuff that triggers during combat like Bident of Thassa, which doubles as a legendary artifact, so it's perfect to search for mid-swing if you know you're going to connect. For ramp, let's go for a slightly different approach than the typical Cultivate Mana Rock stuff. Instead, we'll look for anything that makes our Templar Knights cost less, and there's a lot of options. We've got Nylea, Keen-Eyed, Stormscape Familiar, Thornscape Familiar, Herald's Horn, Pearl Medallion, and for legendary artifacts, we've got Oketra's Monument and Chromatic Orrery. Defiler of Faith kind of serves as a mini Morophon, turning our white pips into Phyrexian mana and giving us a little bit more consistency. To help us search for twice the artifacts, let's use Rings of Brighthearth. Rings of Brighthearth is a 3-drop artifact that says whenever you activate an ability, if it isn't a mana ability, you can pay 2 extra mana to copy that ability. Since Templar Knight's ability only costs 1 white mana to activate, tacking on 2 more mana for another artifact is a pretty easy cost to pay. Plus, if we find ourselves with even 10 Templar Knights, we can use this with both activations, searching for up to 4 legendary artifacts for only 6 mana. But what if we already have legendary artifacts in our hand? Well, let's slap in a Thran Temporal Gateway just in case. Thran Temporal Gateway is a 4-drop legendary artifact that has pay 4 and tap it to put a historic permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Historic permanents are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. As we near the end, let's not forget to throw in some removal and board wipes. Expel the Interlopers and Retribution of the Meek both protect our Templar Knights. We might as well splash in a second Sunrise just in case we get wiped ourselves. Now for the moment we've been waiting for. What are the juicy finishers? Well, of course, there's Thrumming Stone. Thrumming Stone is a 5-drop legendary artifact that says spells you cast have Ripple 4. Whenever you cast a spell, you may reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may cast spells with the same name as the spell from among the revealed cards without paying their mana costs, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. If you'll notice, Thrumming Stone triggers when you cast a spell, but Thrumming Stone itself also casts spells. In other words, Thrumming Stone triggers itself. And if you think about it, with 25 Templar Knights in our deck, on average, every 4 cards should have a Templar Knight, which means unless we totally whiff over and over, Thrumming Stone essentially lets us drop all of our Templar Knights in one turn. Without Thrumming Stone, Akroma's Memorial and Graz's Unstoppable Juggernaut turn your knights into serious threats, but with the Thrumming Stone, you can easily eliminate all opponents with one swing. Finally, since over half the deck are artifacts and creatures, Skyship Weatherlight can help us fetch other stuff that Templar Knight can't quite reach. Skyship Weatherlight is a 4-drop legendary artifact that says, when Skyship Weatherlight comes into play, search your library for any number of artifacts and or creature cards and remove them from the game. And you can pay 4 mana and tap Skyship Weatherlight to put one of those cards at random into your hand. So there you go, the Templar Knight deck. I know there's definitely a lot of fun cards and combos that I had to cut out, like Isochron Dramatic Reversal to activate Templar Knight several times in one combat, searching for all 3 pieces of Cauldra, Chromatic Orrery and Legacy Weapon, or even using Skyship Weatherlight to tutor Nadu and Greaves. All of these would have been great in the deck, but now I want to hear from you. What do you think I missed? Is there a better commander I should have considered? Leave a comment, tell me what you think, consider liking and subscribing, and of course, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.